In the remote highlands of Iceland, where winter is dark and harsh and endless, there are places humans don't go. Not anymore. Once, farms dotted even the most isolated valleys. But over centuries, people moved to cities, to places with electricity, heat, and connection to the modern world. They abandoned the remote farms, leaving the highlands to nature, to isolation, and to the creatures that were there first. The trolls. Most Icelanders don't believe in trolls anymore. They're just folklore, tourist attractions, charming mythology. But in the highlands, farmers know better. The trolls are real, and they remember when humans were neighbors, not strangers. This is a story about a family's last Christmas in the highlands, about a troll who appeared on Christmas Eve, and about the gift he offered that changed everything. The Sigurdsson family had lived on their farm for 6 generations, isolated, independent, hardy, but this would be their last Christmas there. The winters had become too harsh, the isolation too complete. John and Gudrun had decided to sell the farm and move their 3 children to Reykjavik, where there were schools, health care, and opportunity. It was practical, necessary, but it hurt. This land was their heritage, their history. They planned one final Christmas at the farm, one last celebration before leaving in January, never to return. The farm would sit empty, slowly returning to the wilderness. Christmas Eve arrived. The family decorated, cooked traditional foods, and sang carols. They tried to be cheerful, but sadness hung over everything. This was goodbye. The children, Asgeir, Freydis, and little Solveig, sensed it. They were quiet, subdued. At 8 in the evening, as the family sat together, they heard something. Heavy, slow footsteps approaching the house. John went to the window and looked out into the darkness. He saw a massive figure, 8 feet tall and hunched, moving through the snow. He told his family to stay inside, grabbed a rifle, and opened the door. He found himself face to face with a troll. The troll was exactly as the old stories described. Huge, with rock-like skin and moss growing in patches. His small eyes were like stones, but he looked old and tired. He raised his hands, showing he meant no harm, and spoke in an ancient Icelandic accent. He said his name was Grimr. He'd lived in the cave above the farm for over 1,000 years, and had watched the Sigurdsson family for generations. He'd always respected them. They farmed the land carefully, and had honored the old customs even as others forgot. He'd come to say goodbye. He'd heard they were leaving and wanted to thank them. John lowered his rifle and invited Grimr inside. The troll had to duck to fit through the door and sit on the floor, too large for their furniture, but he was gentle. After the initial shock, Gudrun offered him food. He accepted gratefully, saying he hadn't eaten with humans in decades. Most feared him, called him a monster. But the Sigurdsson family had always been kind. As they shared their Christmas meal with Grimr, they learned his story. He was the last of his kind in this region. Other trolls had turned to stone in the sunlight, or simply faded as people stopped believing. He was lonely. The farm had been his only connection to the world beyond his cave. Now the family was leaving, and he would be truly alone. The children, frightened at first, warmed to Grimr. He was gentle with them, telling them old stories from when Iceland was young, when trolls and humans lived closer together. Little Solveig asked if trolls celebrated Christmas. Grimr said they used to celebrate Jul, the winter solstice, but he'd been alone for so long he'd almost forgotten how. Asgeir, the oldest, asked why Grimr didn't leave and find other trolls. Grimr explained that trolls are bound to their territory. This valley, this farm, was his world. When the Sigurdsson family left, he'd remain alone until he finally faded or was caught by sunrise and turned to stone. He'd accepted it. But he wanted one last celebration with others. The family understood. They invited him to share this final Christmas with them. He accepted, grateful beyond words, They celebrated together, singing songs and playing games. The children taught Grimmer modern Christmas traditions, and he taught them old Jarl customs. It was magical. A troll and a human family celebrating together in an isolated farm. As midnight approached, Grimmer grew sad again and said he should return to his cave. But Gudrun stopped him. She asked if he wanted to stay, to really stay, to have company, to not be alone. Grimmer didn't understand. They were leaving. Gudrun looked at John. They'd been having the same thought. What if they stayed? Just one more year to keep Grimmer company. John protested. They'd already decided. There were practical concerns. But Gudrun insisted. They had survived here for 6 generations. One more year wouldn't kill them, and it would mean everything to Grimmer. The children agreed, excited by the idea of having a troll for a friend. Grimmer was overwhelmed. He said he wasn't worth changing their plans for. But John realized something. The farm wasn't dying because of the weather or isolation. It was dying because they had given up. What if they stayed? What if Grimmer could help? He asked the troll. What skills do you have? Grimmer thought. He said trolls were strong, could move rocks, build, and dig. And he knew the land. He knew where water ran underground, where the soil was best, and where to find shelter from storms. He'd watched for 1,000 years. He knew secrets. The family realized the gift Grimmer could offer wasn't just company, but partnership. For generations, they had struggled alone. What if a troll's strength and knowledge could make the highlands viable again? It was worth trying. They told Grimmer they would stay. Not just 1 year, but as long as they could make it work. Together. Grimmer wept real stone tears. He said no one had ever chosen him, ever wanted him around. This family was giving him the one thing he'd wanted most, family. That Christmas night, they made a pact. The Sigurdsson family would stay. Grimmer would help. But there was a condition, one that Freydis, the middle child, said aloud. Grimmer had to be careful to avoid the sunrise. Trolls turned to stone in sunlight. Grimmer nodded. He'd survived 1,000 years by respecting the sun. The family promised they would help keep him safe. They celebrated the rest of the night, planning their future. At 4 in the morning, Grimmer returned to his cave. The Sigurdsson family went inside, exhausted but changed. They had planned to abandon their heritage. Instead, they'd found a reason to stay. A partner, a friend. Christmas had brought them the gift they needed. The partnership transformed everything. During the long winter nights, Grimmer moved boulders, dug irrigation channels, and built new stone structures. His knowledge of the land was invaluable. He showed them how to work with the harsh environment. In return, the family gave Grimmer companionship and purpose. He was sharing 1,000 years of wisdom. Word spread. Other families in the highlands heard about the Sigurdsson's troll. Some came to see for themselves and were amazed. A few even stayed, building their own partnerships with other lonely trolls. The highlands began to revive, becoming something new. Human and troll working together, thriving together. Years passed. The Sigurdsson children grew up on the farm, learning the old ways from Grimmer. They became teachers, helping others create a new tradition that honored both past and present. Grimmer remained, watching generations pass. But he was never alone again. He had a family. He had belonging. Years later, on another Christmas Eve, Salvid, now grown with children of her own, sat with Grimmer watching the northern lights. She asked if staying was the right choice. Grimmer smiled. He said it was the best choice. He had been dying of loneliness, ready to face the sunrise. The Sigurdssons gave him a reason to continue, and he'd given them something too, a connection to the land, to the past, to something deeper than modern life. They had saved each other. The Christmas troll's gift wasn't wealth or magic. It was simpler. It was companionship, belonging, and purpose, the things everyone needs. The Sigurdsson family gave the same gift back. They chose to stay, to include, to value someone forgotten. And that choice made the impossible possible. In the Icelandic highlands, farms still stand, alive, thriving. And if you visit on a dark winter night, you might see them. The trolls, working alongside humans. They aren't monsters. They're neighbors, partners, friends. That forgotten tradition was revived by one family, one troll, and one choice. A choice that proves some gifts come in unexpected forms, and some Christmases change everything. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more.